Hardin is an author and English professor at Columbia State Community College. He's written 6 poetry collections, including No Other Kind of World and Fall Sanctuary, and is the winner of the X.J. Kennedy Prize and the Nicholas Roerich Prize, as well as the Donald Justice Prize. He's an editor of the online journal One, and his latest book is titled A Clearing Space in the Middle of Being. Jeff Hardin.
I'm going to try to read the poem that I wrote this morning. One of my mantras in my classes is, you're writing for now and you're writing for later. So this is now. I'm not sure what it will be later. This is called An Altar. No one knows the question we should be asking, the one that leads to the answer we will not otherwise conceive. Possibly each possibility will remain unknown until the moment, if it does, arrives, when its presence steps forth into our own. Once I was an orphan, caught between one world and another, and then I stood on a library ladder, reading "The soft breeze can come to none more grateful than me." There were other shelves, other lives, words that might have granted a mind beyond the one I wander now. History mumbles through so many drafts. A soldier sleeps in snow in woods he'll never quite return from 60 years later. Belief is merely one horizon, assurance another. One song I found pulled me up out of a miry pit and made my footsteps firm. All my words have been spoken to death, which, as an idea, is not as interesting as the sound of a temple bell in Basho's poem, still coming out of the flowers. Once, someone will say of me, trying to remember, breaking off into nouns and verbs, into phrases, a few of which might come close to revealing how often I stooped to a lily's face, how I wept upon hearing of refugees lost at sea. From one step to the next, one breath to the next, we are always one word from the last one we'll breathe. How long, O Lord, can love waken in us? What if the sniper just today chose a different allegory to abide inside? There's what we see and what we can't see and what we don't know of what we won't conceive of in the first place. There's a boy stepping onto a train because it's 1942. There's someone translating Shakespeare in the ghetto. Each word, each moment is a miry pit. There's the silence of an emptiness at the core of each thought. There's a word we might find that redeems all the others. Yet tomorrow and the next day, we still won't have found how to alter our voice. So carrying on the sonnet tradition, I suppose, I have a whole book of sonnets, which is a surprise to me. I never thought I would write a book of sonnets. This has been mostly 2007, 8, around that time frame, but there's a section of the book called Creekside, and another section called Upon Being Asked to Write a Memoir. So I just sort of gathered together several sonnets under these titles. This one was originally published under the title of Wake. Back then, I'd ride an inner tube downstream for no apparent reason but to follow driftwood, legs dangling in the shadow-speckled cool. The passing moments felt like retrospect, and my form was fitted to the changing place I made of water, heading someplace else. No voice to answer or to reckon with, a quiet from the core of time and me. So when I speak, sometimes I speak from there, that sense of drifting through, surrounded on all sides by wilderness and nothing said. A boy who made such little wake, a man remembering a trailing hand that traced the flow to leave no trace of being there. And this afternoon, this particular friend of mine, his name came up. Okay, I brought it up. But it's one of my oldest friends is Tony Early, fiction writer who lives in Nashville. And I was in a conversation with Tony one time. We were at a Subway. And I said, I love a word I lost and cannot find. And Tony put down his sandwich and said, that's iambic pentameter, which was very impressive that he noticed that. So I wrote it down. It became the first line of this poem. But apparently there is a word that means when a spring comes up, it rides the earth very briefly and then dives back underground. There's a word for that place. I can't find that word. I've asked everybody that I think might know, including Ron Rash, because he knows a lot of nature things, and he asked me why I was wanting to know, and I said, because I want to make it the title of a book, and he said, not if I find it first. I said, I'll break your leg. And he said, I think it'd be worth it. So, a lost word for Tony Early. I love a word I lost and cannot find. It means the place where water dives beneath the ground. I want to go there, to that place, and listen as a man who knows the word and says the word above the place, as if the word itself were prayer, and saying it redeemed the place and me for saying it. The word dives down and takes me underground, where I can hear the cleansing of the earth, the deep down spill of water going down to deepness, filling with a deeper sound. The word fills and fills. I love the word and pray its prayer will say itself without my voice above a place I cannot find or say. And since Amy Wright is here, I thought I'd read a poem that I published a few years ago. I've written a lot of poems to specific poets, kind of thinking about the ways in which our lives overlap or our sensibilities are writing. And so this is for Amy, concerning what balances the rest of the world. A child, I stood knee-deep in creeks and bent to lift small stones as if beneath each one a revelation might appear. Tiny black catfish were my favorite, wriggling toward the wider stream before I caught them in a plastic cup. 2 at least, delivered to my school, lived years in an aquarium where children stood before the massive glass and pointed at the slow glide cells steering left and right in unconcern. Stumps and hillsides and cave mouths always drew me to investigate. And just this morning, I wandered in the snow light toward a woodpecker's back and forth between 2 trees. Too soon, I couldn't feel my hands. But there's that moment mid-flight when the pileated readjusts its wings, and what's underneath, a scalloped white, inflames the crown's deep red all the more. You'll understand the reasons why I cupped my hands and blew my breath to warm my inner creases, then forged ahead unfazed. There's a sanctuary in seeking. Think of Thoreau measuring the depth of ponds, recording blooming dates of flowers, taking, as he said, an insect view of the plain around him. Haven't you, too, imagined your edges leafing out along the forest floor like ferns, or hope to be there when a fern seed blooms, able then to find the place where hidden treasure lies. Perhaps it's all around us, and we never needed myth or folklore to announce what seems as simple as the shape of berries falling on leaves already fallen, some like spears laid aside, others palmate, holding, like us, what is that isn't there. All right, so this particular book, it's a lovely cover, I love this. One of my former students, John Sersel, 3 of my book covers are by him. But I found myself writing these poems where I'd have a stanza that would end with a word or two by itself on a line, and it didn't feel like symmetrical. So I dropped the line, and then I found myself with the last word of a line having the opposite word of the one I just ended with. And I thought, well, I've never seen that before. That's interesting. And so I ended up writing a whole bunch of these poems. So I thought I'd read you one of those. Austerity and wholeness in the imminent day. Always the question of what to do with too many abstractions, whether to agree they are shadows of things, or whether they are light giving insight into what things are. What things aren't is always a guess, or if not always, then half the time, which is itself a guess, or maybe a conjecture, and then only a midpoint on the way to somewhere else undetermined. Not that I've determined how best to describe or to authenticate the ideal, but I've pretty much ruled out standing alone on bridges, like that guy in Munch's painting, and not because I dislike crossing over or fear the rolling in my head, but because, yes, bridges sometimes fall. Early and eager, I rise, and sometimes sense austerity in the rendering of another moment, gathered and released as if a dream stepped out of or stepped into, full of bird flight. A snail's trail, what else in the world can claim to be as overlooked or followed less, as little mentioned or mythologized, as unmimicked, when, if studied closely, it appears to be dividing the earth into 2 halves. A certain wholeness feels more or less imminent each day, especially when fireflies show up, moving backwards among tree branches, giving the air the slip, and the ceiling of what can be thought about begins to swirl. Mostly, I prefer solid ground, though I admit to being swept away, enamored by all that's implausible, and dangling off the edges of anything I say, not paying much mind, but thinking it all inevitable anyway, and maybe it is, or is likely as oleander being the next word, right after I am wordless. And then I'm gonna end with a fairly new poem called Magnified. All I want to do is hold people near, smother them in affection and gratitude that any of us came to exist, here together, now, another hour, a day or 1,000 weeks, none of which I comprehend. Sometimes I want to leap and shout, run around a room, embrace at random, stare into each person's eyes, laugh, lean against, weep if necessary, grow quiet, offer consolation, hold hands and sway, abandon the self, aspire beyond our present pursuits. I figure one day I won't be trusted anymore to venture into public. Look at you, I'll say. You're a miracle of existence. And the cashier will stand there offering a receipt, unsure how to respond. Waiting in line for coffee one time, I stood with a man whose black skin was so clear I had the sense that I was falling into its depths, deeper and deeper. Onyx. That's the word that came to mind, though I was unsure it held enough meaning to mean what his presence could possibly say in that or any moment. Later, I searched the word's possibilities. A protection stone, easily scratched, mentioned 7 times in Genesis, set in the breastplates of Jewish priests. Cryptocrystalline, a structure visible only when magnified. So now I want every cell of him, larger and larger, everyone beholding, reverent, brought to account. I want everyone magnified. Fingerprint whorls, wrist veins, cheekbones, kneecaps, pupils not 4 millimeters in diameter, but 85, 100, vaster, higher, my eyes, anyone's eyes, taking in what stuns the light, illumination directed deeper and farther into our own expanses, still expanding as we look upon each other. All I want is to see what I can't see, know what I can't know, touch what lies beyond the last conception of what lies beyond each moment's conception of itself. Who are we, really, that we are mindful, that we walk among each other's presence, peering in? A number is called, and one more steps forward. The line gets shorter and shorter. Our time together receding, unspoken, leading elsewhere, lost forever. Why do we hold back? Why do we wait? Even now, I'm in an all-out sprint toward anyone. I'm gaining speed. Stand where you are, or run toward me too. I'll meet you in the air. We'll be caught up and risen. Thank you.